100 Custom Hoplite Battle Royales. 100 games of Hoplite has been tried by many before me, however none have tried a 100 games of Custom Hoplite Battle Royale. And the only thing is, I will be hosting these Custom Royales, which means I will know the scenarios before anyone else. Will this give me an advantage in any of the fights, or is it truly skill that can win you a Hoplite Battle Royale? Let's find out. Alright, let's hop into the first game. For game number 1, there were 5 scenarios. Lucky Block, Underground Parallel, Roulette Royale, Time Bomb, and Natural Regeneration. This meant that we could obtain lucky blocks by finding them in structure chests or by mining ores. This paired with Underground Parallel, meaning that the caves were a reflection of the surface, only filled with ores. This meant that we could get lucky blocks extremely easily. Also, every player would spawn with a legendary sniffer that would give you a random legendary weapon, which meant there was some insane potential for this game. Time Bomb meant that when your enemy dies, it will put all of their loot inside of a chest that will explode after 20 seconds. And Natural Regeneration, meaning you'd be just like normal Minecraft, where you would heal using food items, not just gaps and G-hits. After I jumped off the dragon, I immediately looted a structure, which gave me 6 lucky blocks, which allowed me to get a Power 4 book and a bunch of healing. Afterwards, I then made my way down into the massive underground parallel caves, where I spawned my Gerald the Sniffer. There, I was able to obtain my first legendary weapon of the series, the Emerald Blade. The Emerald Blade legendary weapon allows you to deposit emeralds into it. Shift right click to allow to deposit emeralds into it, which makes it stronger, maxing out at sharpness 50, meaning this sword can practically one-shot anyone. Also, when you kill a player or a mob, it has a chance to drop extra emeralds, meaning you can practically farm sharpness levels with this weapon. After I got the Emerald Blade, I then continued to mine the ore trees, specifically looking for diamonds and gold, and obtaining more lucky blocks. I then met up with my teammate where we then enchanted our gear, and I had diamond chestplate and diamond leggings. We then made our way up to the surface, where I then killed mobs for emeralds and sheared leaves for apples, which brought my gapple count up to 12. I then killed a bunch of mobs, which brought my Emerald Blade to over a stack of emeralds inside of it. After I'd finished depositing all the emeralds into my sword, me and my teammate then spotted a full diamond player who was much stronger than us. So we decided to 2v1 him to try and get some gear. However, we decided to back out just to make sure we didn't waste any healing. However, we then spotted a duo that was much more geared than us. So we decided to have to 2v2 them. My teammate then somehow got singled out by 4 enemy players, so I knew there was virtually nothing I could do to save him. However, I spotted a player with only diamond boots trying to end or go away, so I started critting him out with my sharpness 4 emerald blade and was able to quick drop him, getting 5 golden apples and another player head. However, the full diamond player with Riptide then Riptided onto me, and I knew there was probably no way out of this fight. I then fell into a hole with him, and then somehow my gapples then accidentally fell out of my hotbar, and I was unfortunately quick dropped. Alright, let's move on to game 2. For game number 2, I won't go too much into it because it was a part of my last video where I played Hoplite with my friends, so if you want to go see that game in action, it'll be linked in the description. I won't give any spoilers, however I did get 1 kill and 1 assist, and that's that. Alright, let's hop on to game 3. For game number 3, the scenarios Time Bomb and Natural Regeneration were still enabled. However, instead of Lucky Block, we had the scenario Flower Power enabled for this game, which meant that every time you broke a flower, you would get a completely random item. And this turned out to work pretty well for me, as I was able to get 2 gas tiers, which could make totems of undying once I got gold. I also managed to get a gapple, some wind charges, and an enchanted table. With all this incredible loot, I then continued to break flowers for the time being, which gave me some diamond leggings. However, I still didn't have enough diamonds in order to craft a diamond sword, so I was just going to be going into battle with a clean iron one. I then went to go meet up with my teammates, and PvP was enabled. However, we looked for people for so long, and we could not find a good fight to take. People were either too stacked, or they ran away. And eventually, we were singled out 1 by 1. Neo Pokemaster was killed by a team with the Eglos, and Chick-fil-A was dropped by another enemy team in the cave. Me and Pikinator then attempted to find players to quick drop for a player head so we could get a revival star, however nothing was working. However, just by sheer luck, we then managed to single out another player in a forest, so we were able to bring back Chick-fil-A. However, we could not find anyone to quick drop to bring back Neo Pokemaster. Everyone was either too stacked for us or kept healing, and we could do nothing. With our limited gear and limited heals, it was completely over for us, and we were eventually singled out and dropped, including me, ending Game 3. Alright, let's move on to the 4th game. For game number 4, the same scenarios from game number 3 were still enabled, however it was duos instead of quads. Me and my teammate then immediately started breaking flowers when we landed, and my teammate then gathered almost all the materials to craft the Enderbow legendary weapon, however someone beat him to it. I then picked up a goat horn, which was a key ingredient for crafting the Ravager horn legendary weapon. However, me and my teammate then had a very conflicting argument about who would craft it. However, after a long wait, I then finally decided to give him the resources because I knew we needed this weapon to stand a chance in the fights. He then crafted the Ravager horn, but then decided to generously give it to me, knowing that we needed it to survive. So, even though I didn't craft it, I gained my second legendary weapon of the game, the Ravager horn. The Ravager horn legendary weapon allows you to summon a friendly rideable Ravager. Right-click in order to summon a friendly rideable Ravager that is a 5-minute cooldown that will start once the Ravager dies. After we crafted this legendary weapon, me and my teammate then continued to break flowers before PvP. However, we were able to craft another legendary weapon in the Void Staff, meaning we had 2 of the most powerful legendary weapons in the game in the Ravager horn and the Void Staff. However, there were another enemy team lurking over us, and when PvP started, they immediately started hitting me. However, I knew that if I spawned my Ravager, I could maybe take them down. However, they then shrink raided me, which made my hitbox insanely hard to hit. It then killed my Ravager, and me and my teammate had to run. However, we did everything to escape these players, and nothing was working. And eventually, my teammate was singled out and eliminated by a player with the Magma Club. Meanwhile, I was getting chased by his other teammate with the Excalibur, and I then fell into a cave where I attempted to escape. However, after he knocked me back into the cave, I was then singled out by the 2 enemy players with the Magma Club and Excalibur, and there was nothing I could do, which ended a promising Game 4. Alright, let's move on to Game 5. Game number 5 scenarios were exactly the same as game number 1, however the Nether would have a slightly delayed opening, that way people could not immediately rush into the Nether once they got out of their spawn pods. As soon as the game started, I immediately ran away from the cornucopia, knowing that I did not want to die off spawn. As soon as PvP was disabled and the mining phases started, since it was Roulette Royale, I immediately spawned down my Gerald Sniffer, and it just kept giving me good luck, because I got one of the best legendary weapons in the game, the Mjolnir. The Mjolnir legendary weapon is the legendary Thor's hammer. Right-click in order to throw this hammer at enemies that will deal 3 hearts in ranged attack and 4 hearts when you crit melee someone with it. This weapon has a 15-second cooldown. After I'd gotten the Mjolnir, I immediately started looking for structures, and I eventually found one, where I was able to get a lucky block, which I broke and got 2 diamonds from it. I then made my way down into the underground parallel caves, where I immediately started mining ores for lucky blocks, and once PvP was enabled, I would already had full diamond armor, and one of the strongest legendary weapons in the game. Once PvP was enabled, I spotted a player wearing a diamond chestplate, and since I was full diamond wielding the Mjolnir, I knew I could easily take him down, so I initiated a fight. After I used my Mjolnir on this player, he then became scared and ran away, so I decided to locate my teammates so that we could group up. However, when I found one, they were getting chased by a player with the Ravager horn, so I knew I had to help him. So I immediately started critting out the Ravager, and luckily we managed to chase this player down. However, whilst we were chasing him, we then spotted another player, and he was full iron, so we knew this was the perfect kill for us to take, so we chased him. He then used his corrupted crossbow legendary on us. However, after we hit him down into a hole, we knew we could take him down, so we went all in. I managed to get the kill credit on this player, meaning I now had my second legendary weapon of the game, the Dragon Katana. The Dragon Katana legendary weapon allows you to teleport. Right-click in order to activate the teleport dash ability, which has a 12-second cooldown. This weapon deals the same base damage as a netherite sword. Once we eliminated this player, me and my teammate then finally decided to head up to the surface. However, immediately as soon as we got there, we spotted an enemy player, so we immediately decided to chase him down. However, whilst we were chasing this enemy player, more players then decided to show up, and these players were much more stacked than we were. So, even though I had the Dragon Katana and I could escape, my teammate on the other hand was not so lucky, and was quick dropped by these enemies, meaning it was just me and my 2 other teammates left standing. After my teammate had died, I then made the long trek over towards my other teammates, and we then split up for a while to go look for food, and whilst that happened, I spotted an enemy player wielding Fire Aspect. Not only that, his teammates also had the Midas Sword and the Crimson Chainsaw, 2 of the strongest legendary weapons in the game. However, my team had the Shrink Ray, which allowed you to make yourself smaller or the enemies bigger, and we used this on the Fire Aspect player, and we initiated a fight knowing that we needed these players' gear in order to stand a chance.
I'm not gonna die in cave. He needs to die in a cave. He's in a cave. Go to the cave. This guy's the guy that killed that one. I'm not going to back out.
However, in the midst of all the chaos, the enemy with the Excalibur and the Netherite chestplate was then killed by my teammate, so even though I did not have any healing left, it was pretty good that we got this kill on the enemy team. Once the strong player was taken down, we then attempted to chase the rest of the team, however they ran away. So we took some time to craft some healing, however more enemy players then decided to show up. However, they were not prepared for how stacked we were, and after quick dropping one of the players, we then quick dropped another, proving just how strong our team was. After we had taken down these 2 players, we then got separated. However, when I made my way back to my teammates, I realized they were in a fight, so I immediately tried to help them. However, we realized that these players were too skilled for us, so we attempted to run away. However, we realized that if we could just take one of these players down, it would be a huge success, and we could maybe even take down the rest of their team.
Narrator off.
After a long-winded fight with these players, all my healing had been completely drained. So, me and my team then backed out and attempted to craft some more healing, but not before one of our teammates was then taken down by the enemies. And then it was just me and my other teammate left standing. After I'd made 4 golden apples, I then ran into an enemy player. However, after he'd pieced me up in PvP, my teammate then arrived, and because he had Fire Aspect, the enemy stood no chance and was quick dropped. After we'd gotten this crucial kill, we then ran into 2 more very stacked players wielding 2 war picks. However, even though they didn't look that menacing, they shredded my health in seconds, which even got me down to 1.5 hearts. However, I was luckily able to heal up. However, I realized my teammate was still going in at a 2v1, so I immediately ran back to help him, and immediately got in the Fountain of Fate that my teammate had placed down, which gave me regeneration and strength, so I immediately turned the tables in the fight.
No!
However, at the worst possible time, the Fountain of Fate's abilities then ran out, meaning I was stranded on 4.5 hearts. I then attempted to go back in to help my teammate, however this was a huge mistake, because the enemies used their fire aspect and were able to get me down to half a heart, meaning one hit and I'd surely be dead. Eventually, I was able to back out and heal up. However, whilst this was happening, my teammate was then singled out on the other side of the map and eliminated by the team from 4, meaning I was now all alone without much healing. After my teammate was eliminated, I then began looking for animals to kill for food, and eventually I was able to heal back up to full health. However, on my way back towards the cornucopia, I spotted the enemy player from before wielding the war pick, so I immediately tried to take a fight. However, whilst this player may have had heads and gaps, I only had 2 pork chops, meaning he could keep getting away and healing up and I could do nothing. And eventually, the Ender Dragon and his fire aspect netherite sword sealed my fate and I was eliminated. Alright, let's move on to my favorite game of this part 1, game number 6. Now the reason why game number 6 is my favorite game out of this part 1 series is because it was when I hosted my Juggernaut game. Now this video has already been uploaded to my channel on Christmas Day of last year, so I'm going to show you a kill montage because this game was absolutely insane.
I did not realize I'd get launched that high. I'm gonna keep apples on me. Okay, there's people right there. They just have me in a web, dude. What? I'm gonna go look. Oh my god, wait, there's a player right here. There's a bot. Super Tizano guy. I need to kill him. I want to get sharp 10. I want to get sharp 10. I feel like this is a good way out. Like, I don't need webs. Like, webs aren't gonna do me any good. I said that. The Villager 1 cooldown is so long.
Alright, let's move on to game 7. Game number 7 introduced a lot of new scenarios. Although Lucky Block, Time Bomb, and Natural Generation were still enabled for this game, PvP Delay, Starting Inventory, and Second Chance were all enabled for this game. PvP Delay meant that there'd be extra time in the mining phase to prepare for PvP, Starting Inventory meant that every player would get a custom kit at the beginning of the game, and Second Chance meant that if you died during the mining phase, you would get respawned. The custom starting inventory with this game was just your normal kit and a Gerald the Sniffer. However, it was not Roulette Royale, meaning you could still craft other legendaries, or when you killed players, take their legendaries instead. So when I landed, I immediately placed down my Gerald the Sniffer, and he gave me the legendary Golem Hammer. The Golem Hammer legendary weapon grants you the abilities of an Iron Golem. Right-click in order to launch you into the air, and when you come back down, you will activate a Ground Pound ability, smashing into the ground and creating an energy force field around you that will inflict slowness on your enemies, and it will negate all fall damage towards you. After I got this legendary weapon, I then immediately went to the caves in order to get some lucky blocks, and by the time PvP rolled around, for the past 23 minutes I had been mining ores to get lucky blocks, and were able to get tons of OP books like Power 4 and Protection 3, and 50 gold, which I used to make a ton of golden apples. However, by the time PvP rolled around, I still was in full iron armor, so I then had the idea to go back in a cave to get the last remaining diamond I needed for some diamond boots. And finally, after 29 minutes of straight mining, I had a Sharpness 4 diamond sword, Protection 3 diamond boots, and a Power 4 bow, which meant I had some of the strongest weapons in the entire game, including the Golem Hammer, and I would have to put them to use in my first fight. The player that I was fighting had his own Golem Hammer, and even though he also had a diamond chestplate, his weapons were unenchanted, meaning I could absolutely shred his health in seconds, so I turned to fight him.
Oh my god. His weapons are unenchanted. I'm a bot. boss. Oh my god. Just get away.
Even though my weapons were much stronger than his were, I was playing like absolute trash, so he managed to get away and heal up. I then learned that there were more players fighting nearby, however I decided I would stick on this player knowing that he was weak and low. And then he turned to fight.
Actually, the one. Alright. I'm actually like a bot over here, bro. I'm dead.
Even though my sharpness 4 was absolutely shredding his health, another player came to clean, so I had to back up and heal. And eventually I spotted him again, and I knew that I couldn't let him get away this time.
He thought he got away, but he didn't. Because I'm still here.
And even though he managed to get me in a good combo, I managed to golem hammer him, which took away a bunch of his health. And from there, I was able to crit chain him and drop him in seconds, giving me access to a bunch of gold, regeneration potions, diamond armor, and a player head. After I managed to take this player down, I then backed up and enchanted my diamond chestplate with protection 2 and my diamond boots with depth strata 2. I then sheared some leaves for some apples and managed to bring my healing up to 14 golden apples, multiple regeneration pots and healing pots, and a lot of Halloween candy, meaning I was absolutely loaded on healing. I then decided to go back towards the chaos when I spotted a player hiding in the walls of a cave, so I had the brilliant idea to sneak attack on him to get an easy player head. I then gold hammered him through the walls, and I decided to dig to him. I then found him in a wall wielding the armadillo detonator, which he then detonated. However, my sharpness 4 was absolutely shredding him. He then had the brilliant idea to pearl away. However, he then landed on the edge of the cave and fell on dripstone and died, which gave me access to another player head, a bunch of diamonds, 10 golden apples, and an armadillo detonator. However, this happened. I don't know why I didn't move. Alright, let's move on to Game 8. Game 8 scenarios were basically the same as game number 7's, however, Second Chance was swapped for no deathmatch, meaning that the border would slowly shrink in around the middle instead of being teleported to a deathmatch arena. As soon as the spawn pods were released, I immediately ran away from Cornucopia, knowing that I did not want to die off spawn on my own custom. And as soon as the mining phase enabled, we all received our starting inventories, which was 1 Midas Sword, 3 Gerald the Sniffers, and 64 apples, meaning you did not have to go shearing trees for all your healing. I then placed down all 3 of my Gerald the Sniffers and managed to get 3 insanely overpowered legendaries, the Excalibur, the Ravager Horn, and the Dragon Katana. The Midas Sword legendary weapon allows you to wield the power of King Midas. When you kill a player or a mob, it will drop gold. When you kill a player, it will have a chance to upgrade the sharpness level of this legendary weapon, which maxes out at sharpness 10. The Excalibur legendary weapon allows you to become invincible. Right-click in order to activate the invincibility effect around you that will last for either 10 seconds or for 3 enemy hits. This ability has a 45-second cooldown. After I had obtained these 3 overpowered legendary weapons, I then decided to go looking in the caves for ores to mine lucky blocks. However, while I was searching, I then found a player's corpse lying underground. So I had the idea to suffocate him with gravel to take his corpse. And then I realized that he was full diamond, meaning I could get a bunch of loot if I played my cards right. I eventually suffocated his corpse and he died. However, I forgot that it was Time Bomb, so it took me a long amount of time to clear out the gravel before I could open his chest. There, I gained access to a bunch of loot. However, I didn't want to make the same mistake as last game, so I then had to back away before getting some of the loot. I was able to get a diamond chestplate and 2 legendaries, however I missed out on half diamond, the Skull River's Lantern, and some lucky blocks. The 2 legendaries that I got were the BI Blaster and the Shrink Ray. The Shrink Ray is Gru's invention. Right-click in order to shoot a beam at your enemies that will grow them in height that will last for 12 seconds. This makes them more immobile and easier to hit. Left-click in order to make yourself smaller for 12 seconds, making you easier to navigate and harder to hit for enemies. This ability has a 50-second cooldown. The BF Blaster legendary weapon allows you to summon the power of the bees. Right-click in order to shoot a beehive full of 4 bees that will sting your enemies. This ability has a 32-second cooldown and is equivalent to an unenchanted bow. I then continued to mine ores and break lucky blocks for the time being. Then I went to the surface and PvP was enabled. I then spotted 3 players fighting over by the forest biome, one wielding the Crimson Chainsword and the other wielding another Shrink Ray. So I then used my Shrink Ray to Shrink Ray another, and I went in. Eventually, I was able to get a player very low, and I chased him down, knowing that I could quick drop. However, he then placed down the legendary Fountain of Fate, which meant it gave regeneration to us, so we would all be tanking hits. So even though I was dealing a lot of damage, he could resist through it. I then backed away from the Fountain of Fate and used it to regen up.
I basically destroyed his health. Low-key, I've destroyed his health. Let me use this to heal up more.
After I used the Fountain of Fate to heal up, I then went in on some other players. However, the guy from before then wanted another 1v1, so we dueled.
Come here! Oh, he's just... So this guy's an L2 bro. This guy's super laggy though.
However, he shredded my health with his Crimson Chainsword, so I used my Shrink Ray to get away, and eventually I was able to lose him. I then went back to 0-0 and saw the most incredible thing happen. Whilst 3 other players were fighting near 2 time bombs, one of the guys' time bomb exploded another player and exploded the other time bomb, dropping all of their loot and legendaries on the ground. So I attempted to pick it up, however I knew that I couldn't get this weapon. So I then Shrink Rayed the diamond chestplate guy that was trying to sweep the loot, and I went in on him. However, he then harpoon launched away, so I went in on 2 other full diamond players. However, I realized that the loot pile was still left, so I went to go pick up some loot, and even though I dropped the diamond leggings, I still managed to get 2 very overpowered legendaries in the Cloud Sword and the Mjolnir. The Cloud Sword legendary weapon allows you to summon the ability of the clouds. Right-click in order to summon walkable clouds that you can walk on that will last for 10 seconds. Also, when you hold this weapon in your main hand, you will negate all fall damage and you will gain a slight speed boost. After obtaining all this loot, I then backed out for a little while, but then realized that I forgot to get the diamond leggings, so I went back to the loot pile, and luckily they were still there. However, while I was putting them on and sorting out my inventory, a player then enderbowed on me and Crimson Chainsworded me, and by the looks of his name, it looked like a very obvious nick, so this was obviously a very good player. He then uses Beehive Cannon and Shrink Ray B, so I knew that I had to escape. However, he wouldn't let me go.
I've shrunk myself down a little bit, but I need to keep running.
And now these legendary weapons were proving just how useful they could be. The Dragon Katana kept me teleporting away, the Excalibur kept me tanking enemy hits, Cloud Sword gave me a small speed boost, and the Mjolnir kept knocking the enemy back. However, once he wouldn't let me go, and our fight then carried over to one of the top of the cornucopia buildings. I was then knocked off, but luckily a bot then spawned right next to our fight, so he decided to go for that instead of chasing me. However, once he was done killing the bot, his Lich Staff had now fully charged up, so he then charged after me. However, he was not able to get as close to me as he wanted, so he then backed off, and I was in the clear. After backing up, I ran around the outskirts of the map for a little while until I found a horse wearing diamond armor and a powdered snow pile, which were 2 great finds because those combined could be used to craft the legendary Horn of Winter. However, I was still missing the 2 diamonds required for it, so I decided that I would kill for it even though my weapons weren't that strong. Once I was at middle, I then used my Mjolnir to try and deplete other players' health. However, I didn't actually get involved in any of the fighting, so I realized that if I wanted 2 diamonds to craft the Horn of Winter, I needed to get a kill. So I then went in on a full diamond player. I attempted to shrink with this player, however I missed. He then puffer cannoned me and went in with his Shadow Blade and Crimson Chainsword. and he shredded my health. So I then used my Ravager Horn to back out and heal up. However, another player with the Horn of Winter then came in, so I had to get off my Ravager if I wanted to escape and survive. Once I'd made it back to the cornucopia safely and healed up, I then spotted a bot, and since no one else was around me, I then took the opportunity to get a free kill, a free Midas level, and a free player head.
Elite and Sucker Merchant. Okay, here's the Lost Gold. It's a bot. Okay, I can't fight anyone.
Eliminating this bot was a huge success, because it gained me an extra Midas level, which brought it up to sharpness 2. It also gave me 2 gold ingots and a free player head. I then waited on the outskirts of Cornucopia, hoping for another bot to spawn, and luckily it did. It snuck up on me, but luckily its armor and weapons were no match for mine.
Trident, like... What the... Okay, it's another...
And I was easily able to take him down, gaining another sharpness level, bringing my Midas sword all the way up to sharpness 3. And while I was crafting another gap and another G-head, another bot then spawned.
That's not happened. Sharp 3 Midas. It's not bad. Okay. Another one?
And I was easily able to take this one down as well, giving me sharpness 4 on my Midas sword. Just as things were starting to look up for me, the player with the Midas, Horn of Winter, and Skulkweaver's Lantern then showed up at the worst possible time, knocking me out of a tree and forcing me to eat my G-head. He then chased me down, but before I could get away, he trapped me in the Skulkweaver's Lantern domain expansion ability, and by the time I escaped, I was on very low HP. So even though I had a bunch of healing left over, I was taken down by this player's incredibly strong Midas sword, ending a great game 8. Alright, let's move on to the second to last game of part 1, game 9. For game number 9, the scenarios were exactly the same as game number 8 and game number 7, although the starting inventory was a little bit different. Instead of just 3 Geralds, a Midas, and 64 apples, we also added an efficiency 5 netherite pickaxe. That way you can mine lucky blocks and ores much faster. As per usual in these games, as soon as I received my starting inventory, then immediately went out of the caves to start mining for lucky blocks. I managed to find a dripstone cave which housed iron rock boulders, which meant I could get all these iron blocks, which would save me a ton of time from having to mine iron in the future. I then placed down all 3 of my Gerald of the Sniffers, and got 3 of the best legendary weapons in the game, the Lich Staff, the War Pick, and the Magma Club. The Lich Staff legendary weapon allows you to harness the power of the ice. Right-click in order to launch a frost ball at your enemy that will inflict freeze damage upon them and turn the ground around them to ice. Also, when you hit a player with this legendary weapon, it will freeze them as well. When you walk near water with this legendary weapon, it will turn into ice. The Warpig legendary weapon is a legendary pickaxe that is enchanted with sharpness 10. When you mine a block with this legendary weapon, it will trigger an explosion that will mine all blocks within a 3x3x3 radius. This ability has a 3-second cooldown. Also, when you crit a player with this legendary weapon, it will have a chance to slightly knock them back and reduce their armor durability. This ability has an 18-second cooldown. The Magma Club is a slightly better diamond sword. When you melee with this weapon, you will have a chance to set your enemies on fire, kind of like a temporary fire aspect. Also, when you hold in your main hand, you will prevent all fire damage, meaning you basically have permanent fire aspect and permanent fire resistance. These legendary weapons were all fantastic, so with my luck meter charged up, I then went down to the caves to mine some more ores, and I cannot begin to tell you how many lucky blocks I was able to obtain. Just trust me, it was a lot. I was able to enchant my Magma Club with sharpness 2, and I was able to equip full diamond armor, although it was unenchanted and I didn't have any books or an enchantment table to enchant my armor. So I had the idea to go up to the surface and attempt to look for more players. I then came across a supply drop, which I broke and got 1 golden apple and a protection 1 book for my chestplate. So I then equipped it and then went over towards the center of the map. But before I got there, I spotted a half diamond player using his Fountain of Fate, so I charged over to him. But after I didn't do much damage, I then circled back to a loot pile that I had ran past, and I noticed a legendary weapon in the pile, so I managed to pick it up, and I realized that it was another very good legendary, the Horn of Winter. The Horn of Winter legendary weapon allows you to summon the legendary Ice Horse Abrazax. Right-click in order to summon Abrazax, and right-click while riding him in order to turn the ground around you into powdered snow and freeze your enemies. Also, when you shoot arrows with this weapon, they will turn into ice blocks which will fire at enemies, freezing them in place. After I got this legendary weapon, I then decided to head over towards the cornucopia, and I decided to try out my ice horse. However, I almost completely forgot about its secret 4th ability that allowed you to ride on top of water and it would turn into ice. On the way to the cornucopia, I also decided to kill mobs for gold, and my healing was now at 10 golden apples and 2 golden bread. When I got to the cornucopia, there wasn't anyone that I was particularly wanting to fight, so I decided to back out. However, when I got to the lake from before, I then spotted another player with the Horn of Winter and a netherite chestplate player, so I knew I had to get my hands on these players' loot if I wanted to stand a chance and get the victory.
This guy's Mjolnir, bro. Oh, it's topics! No! What is all this loot, bro? Okay, yes.
After failing to kill this player and narrowly escaping death, I then decided that I would go back in the caves one last time in order to get as stacked as I possibly could before I went back into the surface and killed players to upgrade my Midas Sword. As right now, it was only sharpness 1, which meant it would absolutely do no damage against a very stacked player. So I mined a bunch of ores and a bunch of lucky blocks until I was stacked enough that I made my way up to the surface. I then upgraded my diamond leggings to netherite, which meant I was insanely stacked. However, I still needed kills, so I went around looking for other players. That's when I found a player on the side of the mountain near the cornucopia, so I rode my Horn of Winter over to him. However, it then glitched and I got stuck in powdered snow and he got away. I then looked around cornucopia for some other players. However, I could find no one that was as stacked as me willing to take a fight. So I then ran around for a little bit, and eventually I found another loot pile, this time containing 3 other legendaries: the Void Staff, the Pufferfish Cannon, and the Aglos. The Aglos legendary weapon is a mythical spear. Right click in order to launch it at enemies that will create a small explosion on impact. You can also use this to boost yourself, so this is a great legendary weapon for getting away. Also, this weapon is 7.5 attack damage, just a little bit better than a diamond sword. The Pufferfish Cannon legendary weapon allows you to shoot poisonous pufferfish at enemies at lightning speed. Right click in order to launch 3 poisonous pufferfish at enemies every 25 seconds. The Void Staff legendary weapon grants you the power of the shulkers. Right click in order to launch shulker pellets at your enemies, and shift right click to create teleportation portals that you can teleport from and that will despawn after 45 seconds. Left click to swap between these modes. Once I eliminated this player, I finally had access to an enchantment table, something I had been waiting for all game. However, I didn't have enough levels to make a Protection 2 diamond chestplate, so I would need to get some. However, whilst I was doing this, a bot then spawned on me, so I knew that it was the perfect time to get a Midas Sword kill.
I am a bot. I'm a bot. Okay, well, I think really I should be considered the bot because the bots are not supposed to be like...
I was able to take this bot down with ease, giving me a sharpness level on my Midas Sword, bringing it up to sharp 2, a bit stronger than what I had previously. However, just as things were starting to look up for me, a player by the name of Clueless wielding the Crimson Chainsword then showed up, and he was out for blood. He used his Crimson Chainsword bleed effect on me, and my health was shredded in seconds. However, luckily, I just about managed to escape using my 3 good legendary weapons. However, another player by the name of Presently was out for even more blood. And even though I had the Lich Staff, the Aglos, and the Horn of Winter, 3 of the best legendary weapons for getting away, he had a Dragon Katana and a Riptide Trident, which meant he could catch up to me in literal seconds. So even though I had these strong legendaries, I was overwhelmed by the power of his weapons, and was eventually taken down by this player. Alright, let's move on to the final game of the part 1 of this series, game number 10. For game number 10, it was already uploaded onto my YouTube channel, so if you want to go see the full footage, link is down in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you made it this far, then you probably like my content, so please make sure to leave a like down below and subscribe. I've been on an absolute grind this summer, just fully editing videos for you guys, because I want to try and make the best content possible. This is probably the most work that I've ever put into a video, so I really appreciate you guys if you drop a sub down below and a like. these videos have been sitting in my captures folder for quite a while now, and I just decided that I'd finally do something with them because they're very good games, and I thought I'd showcase them here today. I will try to get a part 2 of this series out before the end of 2027, so most likely will happen, but who knows, we'll see. Also, I will try to divert away from strictly just Hoplite content. I'll try to focus also on MCC Island, Hypixel, Sword MC, maybe some SMP videos on the Fresh SMP, but we'll see. But as for now, thank you guys for watching until the end of the video. Peace.